Good afternoon, everybody. It is a real pleasure to see all of you and to be here, filling in for my colleagues Andries Coetzee and Naomi Andre, who will be joining us later. But my name is Henrike Flores-Bos, and until very, very recently, I worked at the African Studies Center. And I'm very happy to welcome you all here this afternoon for what is actually not just the first Umaps colloquium of this winter 2022 semester, but it's also the first in-person Umaps colloquium series that we're doing since the pandemic. So congratulations for being part of that first post-pandemic or endemic Umaps colloquium series. We are very pleased that we are able to host this as a series again, which means that there will be more of these sessions as the semester progresses every few weeks or so. And you can find the dates for the Umaps colloquium. You'll be notified in the ASC e-newsletter, and you can also find that on our ASC website, and I hope you will consider joining all of them. I will be very brief, but before I introduce today's speakers, I want to thank the sponsors of the Umaps program, which include the U of M President's and Provost offices, the South Africa Initiative Office at the Department of Afro-American and African Studies, the Mellon Foundation through a grant to Makerere University in Uganda, and this semester also a private donor who is funding a slot for a Kenya-based Umaps scholar. I also want to thank all of our audience members who are here. I think a few people might also be joining us on Zoom. And I want to thank, in this case, Makerere University's Department of Social Work and Social Administration, because they sent us not just one, but 2 Umaps scholars, which means that everybody else in that department has to work not twice, but like 4 times as hard. So thank you very much, Makerere Department of Social Work and Social Administration, for having sent us those 2 wonderful scholars. I will just introduce now Dr. Firminus Mugumya, who will speak first for 20 minutes. After that, we will just have 10 minutes for Q&A, and then we go on to the second speaker. So Dr. Firminus Mugumya is at the Department of Social Work and Social Administration at Makerere University in Uganda. And here at U of M, he was working with Dr. James Ellis, and he will be presenting today his work on school retention in Uganda, community capitals, and university community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon. I think with that introduction, I'm just going to go straight to my presentation. My topic is clearly displayed: school retention in Uganda, community capitals, and university community engagement. This is my topic, and this is the research I've been working with. I got disrupted when the COVID came in because some of the research could not be done, but I had made very good progress, and I'm going to share with you where I am or where the progress is so far. This is the outline. I'll look at a few things. I'll give an introduction, the theoretical framework, the methodology, talk about some of the preliminary findings, and then study implications and possibly also the next steps. We know traditionally that universities have these 3 very important functions: teaching, research and service to society or service to the community. These are the traditional functions. And the question here is, how are the universities, and particularly my university, playing these functions, and especially the third function, the service to community, which is really, really under scrutiny. How is this function being played? I know that even before we are promoted, we have to prove that there is an element of service that we have provided to the community. So it's a task not just for the universities, but also for faculty to prove that they are doing something with the communities. And thankfully, some countries, I know, especially outside Africa, have really done well to promote the engagement of universities into the communities. And I just take the example of Ireland, where I actually happened to live when I was doing my PhD, and my professor was a director of an engagement program, which I really liked, and perhaps my interest began around there when I had those interactions. They look at university service as key for countries' future strategic direction. So what am I doing in this project? I'm trying to explore opportunities for taking social work scholarship to the community. And social work scholarship, kind of like I am trying to pilot this in Uganda. And this is, again, to explore how this can serve as a catalyst for sustainable education outcomes for children, focusing on education for children, youth, and their families in marginal communities in Uganda. Why is it important to focus on education? We know too well, and we have heard that education is the key to success. And so everybody wants to attain some education that would promote or push them to the success that everybody would want to have in this world. At the national level, human capital development, individuals gain opportunities once they attain education, and families. Research shows that families that have sent their children to school or have higher levels of education easily escape poverty. So it's key. In 1997, Uganda thankfully rolled out universal primary education. And this resulted into an increased enrollment, rising from 2.8 in 1996 to now over 8 million. But that has not just gone without issues. When you look at this graph, to tell you the story about enrollment and retention, from 2011 to 2016, you look at the trend here, enrollment is very good, very high for grade 1. But as children progress to the next grades, and I'm talking about primary school, because Uganda has a preschool, primary, lower secondary, and then higher secondary, and then university. So the problems begin to come, and sharply in the second year in grade 2. And by primary 7, you have almost 3/4 of the children out of school. So this is worth talking about. And how do we address this? Quite a number of interventions have been there. It's not that nothing is being done, nothing is happening. NGOs, civil society organizations, communities are doing something, but the trend is still as bad as this. Dropout is still very high. So why then, how do we think? We think perhaps this is the time to decentralize, to push actions and responses to the grassroots. And that's where I'm bringing social work, community social work, and utilizing social work, faculty, and students as a resource to try to see through engaging with communities and using the community capitals framework, we could address this problem. So the 4 questions are the questions that I'm working with. I may not talk about all of them in terms of the findings, but I'll point to some of the key emerging findings as we move along. Question number 1, what capitals are communities able to identify and link to solving the problem of retention? And what factors influence whether and how they are able to utilize these capitals to address school retention problems. And number 3, because universities are not everywhere, but they are also institutions, and there will be need to engage these institutions, I asked in which ways can local government institutions work with universities and communities that they serve to sustain grassroots engagement for sustainable education outcomes. And number 4, which is based on the social work program, where we have mandatory field placements, and which I look at as an opportunity for initiating and sustainably having this engagement. How best can the social work field work placement program and the wider internship beyond social work at the university serve as springboard for engaged communities in case it is planned and implemented around the community capitals? But what are community capitals? The literature looks at community capitals to represent assets in all aspects of the community. Assets, things that are able to be utilized to solve problems, and they could be tangible or non-tangible assets. And capital, again, as cited from Flora and Fair, any type of resource capable of producing additional resources. The question is, are these resources there? We can explore these resources through research and engage around these resources and see how these resources could be invested to create new resources to address problems. This now takes me to the community capitals framework, which is a lens through which we can explore these assets, and it really promotes a highly participatory research methodology approach. It needs time, it needs patience, it needs learning and unlearning, and so you don't have a definite research, timeline. You keep working. So universities are there, they have programs which are running, they have faculty who are teaching, researching, and so this could happen. So just to bring you to the capitals, these are 7, again, from the literature. The figure here shows you that actually these capitals are not standing alone. They are not in isolation. They interact, they communicate, they are linked to others. And depending on how they are linked, depending on the processes of having these capitals linked, then we would get the outcomes: a healthy ecosystem, vital economy or social well-being. Built-up capital, this is infrastructure, roads, buildings. Financial capital, savings and credit schemes, banks. Political capital, every place will have politicians and will be political. So you have leaders who are elected by the people who are linked to government, to other resources. Social capital, this is the population, the community, the cohesion in the families and communities, the human capital, labor skills. Cultural capital, norms, social norms, and then the natural capital, the natural environment. The most important thing to know here is that to proceed, to succeed, all these capitals need to be moving together. So to be able to have all these capitals move together, then we need an action. And the action would be the kind of engagement I'm looking at. Where is this study happening? Maybe if I was in Uganda, this wouldn't be a relevant slide. But for the location of the country where this research is happening, East Africa, Uganda, the source of the Nile, and also known, unfortunately, in history for having a dictator in the 70s. Many times, this is what helps us to know about Uganda when we all talk about Uganda. That's the area, it's Kamwenge district where I'm doing the research. It is in Western Uganda. And then I tried to do a satellite image again of the school. The red, Ikamiro Primary School, is a school community that the engagement is going to happen or is happening. Then moving northwest, Kamwenge College School is a secondary school which takes us up to level 13. So we can have primary. And then another school, I'm studying 2 community schools for primary that are actually sandwiching a secondary school. The reasons are many as to why I chose this study area. Obviously, the district is peripheral, far away from the city, about 6 hours of drive or 250 miles or 200 miles. And then the teacher-pupil ratio in lower classes is high, dropout rate is high, and importantly, I have a bias. I studied in one of the schools, that is Ikamiro. And because I know the bias, I will work with this bias to make sure that I generate very objective results. I visit this community. I observe, I am asked questions. I think I might be the only graduate since 1983 that has studied up to master's level. And if there are any other people who have completed university, they might be like 3. Just to give you the picture. Why? It's located in Uganda, but there are issues around why children are not staying in school and completing school. And every time I'm asked questions, I'm like, what can I do for my school? What can I do for this community? So I thought maybe this research will give me an opportunity to engage and see the changes that are happening. So that's the bias. It's a struggle to avoid biased findings, but I'm ready to really generate objective findings, and I hope I'll get there and cause a transformation. This is an exploratory and sequestered mixed methods research. I began with community meetings. I've done 3 so far with the school communities in which participatory mapping of capitals was undertaken. I've also done a baseline to test a number of indicators, perceptions, beliefs about schooling, dropout, and all of that, in all the households, 238 households in the 2 villages. Most of these others, I am going to do them, but importantly, I have to do a community feedback to present these findings and then generate more discussion on what can be done. The analysis is ongoing, and then I hope that I'll develop guidelines for community engagement and also place students there, social work students there, and make sure that we continue doing this. I hope the university will support me to do this and continue to make presentations and share experiences. Preliminary findings I'll share today that the communities have all the 7 capitals that I identified, but with varying strength requiring further inquiry to know which is perhaps being emphasized above the others so that the engagements could bring about a balance of emphasis. They have done that or utilized some of them to put up classrooms. They keep asking me to donate, and I have donated a roof for one of the classrooms, hire private teachers to boost existing staff, buy essential textbooks, and all of this, because they know the value of education, and it's only happening because some action is happening with a few actors. But due to weak organization, some of the members of the community are actually decapitalizing the already existing capitals and going back to say, well, why do you do all these things? Government should be doing these things. So we need to work with those minds to bring them back into becoming capital to support the progress of the education, learning. And so again, I find from what I've so far done that there are quite a number of mediators of dropout that can be targeted through engagements. I have grouped them into 3: demand-related, supply, and process or precursors for dropout. Household income is an issue because there are indirect costs related to education, and also the children have to produce, to participate in production at household level, and they end up actually becoming laborers. Then the context and motivations, the families are large, the extended family is big, and because of a number of reasons, there are orphans, and so this affects the extent to which children are going to stay in school, the health of the children, the families, the caregivers. And I also brought about here early pregnancy because of, again, some capitals which are not really working, like cultural capital, early marriage, age issues, that at a certain age somebody is expected to get married. So there are still these issues that require an engagement with the communities, gender and cultural norms affecting. These are mediators of dropout, all of them connecting in a way. The supply-related factors are government policy. You have UPE, we have UPE, but we do not have a compelling law that children must stay in school, which would be targeting the caregivers. School resources and facilities insufficient, school environment, sometimes which does not provide really safety or security for the children, all combined to affect retention. Then there are processes and precursors to dropping out, repeating versus promotion. When a child is asked to repeat, when they don't perform well and they are the last in school, how they are treated, how they are managed, when they enroll late, all these issues were emerging from the discussions and from the survey. So maybe because of time, I should move to what implications am I seeing emerging from this study and from this project. This work is leading to affirmation or confirmation that communities in Uganda actually do not lack capitals or assets. They only lack how these assets could be utilized to transform them. And so we need catalysts. And social workers many times play the catalyst role of energizing social change and stimulating and keeping it. Also, we will see promotion of effective or long-lasting government community partnerships, because universities won't work alone without engaging the institutions of government. And then engagement around enrollment alone is also likely to impact on other issues such as gender equity, household assets development, because we experience that beyond just enrollment, there are other issues of organization that could be touched. And we think also that this university community engagement process in this study site is going to create an opportunity for thinking around establishing social hubs where in different parts of the country we could have such kinds of activities, research activities with faculty and students involved to enable more research, more engagement with the communities. Field placements for social work are likely to be easier to evaluate because we are going to set targets and objectives and follow these and see how they're being achieved, and they may become also more enjoyable because we'll be looking forward to results and social change. We also see a possibility for improved accountability among local leaders because of the engagement that is going to be happening, and an increased appreciation of the importance of universities by the communities, by the people, because they are seeing universities more now closer to them. And then for us from faculty, we also appreciate how communities would really be very important when engaged to advance our scholarship. I want to thank the African Studies Center and the Umaps program for the opportunity to be here. I was looking forward to this. And Andrew Mellon Foundation for the funding. And you said it all when you talked about social work and Makerere for allowing us the opportunity here, and to you all here and others online. For the audience, I want to thank you very much. I'm happy to, you said this is not the first colloquium, but maybe in the second or the other, this phase of the colloquium, I'm happy to have been the first person in the cohort to speak. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your good presentation. I just want to ask, there's a trend in Africa now, and probably because of the unemployment, a lot of youths don't really see the need for education. I don't know, probably, maybe I'm talking from the perspective of Nigeria now, I don't know other part of Africa. And it's really challenging now to really convince them that education is very important. So now, how do you factor people like that in a study like this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting talk. Did you find any distinctions between day schools and boarding schools in the way in which retention is either improved or worse? And I'm thinking specifically about security, the children in day schools coming to school or going home in the dark on rather dangerous roads. So could you say a few words about that, please?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Can you please elaborate a bit more on government involvement in schools? So to what extent does the Constitution protect a right to education, if it does exist in your Constitution? And also elaborate a bit more on school fees. In South Africa, for example, schools in a certain category, mostly former black schools, parents do not pay any school fees, so it's totally dependent on government to pay to carry the costs. So to what extent is government involved in school fees, and then how is the right to education protected in your Constitution? Thank you.
Okay. Then we take the first round.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the questions. I could start with the last one, Loretti. Government involvement in schools. Well, the government, and in terms of the education as a right, the government is there trying to provide opportunities for everyone to go to school. The first input that the government has made is to introduce universal primary education and universal secondary education. It is in line with fulfilling the human right of access to education. But also, alongside government, there is government has put in place those schools which we call public schools, but there are also private schools. And these private schools and government schools are different in terms of the cost of accessing education in those service centers. This also comes to your question of the school fees, because it's very important to talk what's the cost of accessing education. And I want to talk about the cost in relation to these kinds of grassroots communities that I'm studying, because can they afford if there is any associated cost? And I knew that this would be an issue, engaging them on enrollment and agreeing with them that poor retention is a problem for the community. So the issue of cost came up very, very fast. We can't afford. And now I liked the fact that the engagement around cost eventually turned out to be that these communities actually realized that they can afford the cost. On average, the cost of being in school computed based on this discussion was about $10 for every. And then the question of where does the $10 come from was also discussed. And eventually, through engagement, I realized that actually people can address this issue. The cost is not that really, really constraining. So for basic, if you can afford private schools, then it's up to you. But there are public schools. The environment might not be the best, but the facilities, the teachers are paid. The schools are supplied with basic teaching and learning equipment. So there's already something to start with. The other question is about the comparison between day schools and boarding schools in terms of retention, and most especially related to the issue of risk and security. I have not compared these. Perhaps I could pick interest into going into this to see what the statistics tell me. But if they are boarding schools, they are most likely going to be private schools that parents can afford to take their children to. And then if they are government schools and are boarding schools, still they will be charging higher fees than what actually government recommends, because parents can still afford. So again, retention issues are likely to come back to day schools, because these are schools that are affordable by the majority because they are closer. You won't have a boarding facility, for example, in these two communities that I'm studying that are public schools. And then the first question was the need for, that how do we factor the issue of some of the people in Africa actually saying that they don't see any value in education. I want to tell you that this issue also emerged in our discussions. It's one of the issues that are actually mediating dropout. People are questioning the value of education. But I want to share with you how I came around this challenge that was posed to me during the research. I asked the community members to identify some of the members in their community who have actually not gone to school and are successful. They were very quick to identify these members. Success in terms of a good house, some investments, some money, and interestingly, including ability to keep these, to keep the children of these successful people in school. So that was very interesting. So I came back and said, well, if education was not important and these people knew that they were successful without going to school, they would have not bothered to take their children to school. So we had a discussion around there. So the answer is, it's not that people really don't value education. It's circumstances that need to be addressed, that they can consider education again as a success, as a key to success. And these circumstances require these engagements so that we are able to appreciate that there will be success, whether we want it or not. It is higher for those who have access to education than those who have not gone to school or attained any qualification or skill that they will have picked from school. Thank you.
So I came late, and therefore I have no idea how much question time has elapsed already. Is there time? So, Tia, you've been keeping time. How long have we been on the questions here?
9 minutes now.
So I think in that case, let's thank our colleague for his presentation. Thank you so much. And I am really sorry that I missed the beginning of the event today and therefore missed your presentation. I know it is being recorded, and I will make sure to listen to it later. But then next, we are going to welcome Firminus's colleague, Justus Twesigye, from the same university, Makerere University, and the same department, Social Work and Social Administration. And you see that Justus will talk to us about youth unemployment in Uganda. Justus.
Thank you so much. So I'm just taking it from where my colleague has left it. The issues of unemployment were raised. It is part of my title, Reducing Youth Unemployment in Uganda, the Role of Social Entrepreneurship in Social Work. Now, I'm a social worker by training, from my master's up to a PhD, and I teach in the Department of Social Work. My research, in a way, addresses my passion of a profession to which I've committed much of my life, and in which I am trying to socialize many of the students who come to our department. Now, when you look at social work, I think this is a profession which is almost everywhere in the world. You're going to find social workers everywhere. And where the people, then social work is normally required. One of my professors tells me that he wonders how a person who's done social work gets unemployed. And I came across this textbook which has 101 careers in social work, and this is just simplistic because there are actually more than that. It says social workers should have a job as long as there are people. If you cannot find the people, then you can plant a tree, according to one of my professors. When you do social work, you find jobs in areas which you regard as conventional or mainstream, and those which are not conventional. One can work, for example, with children, you can work with elderly, you can work with rehabilitation, you can work with refugees. The landscape is always so wide. But also you may go into areas which are not mainstream or conventional, such as, self-employment. You can do documentary filmmaker, you can become an entrepreneur. And I think the last one, entrepreneurship, is where my talk is going to be. Now, how do I come to this kind of research? Just on the 5th of March, there was a very unfortunate incident just in one of our neighboring universities. A former graduate, a young person, just came and committed suicide on the 5th of March. There's so many of these stories in our newspapers, and it could be anybody. It could even be a social worker. Actually, have so many of the stories written about social workers being unemployed. Our president has always bashed social work as one of the useless causes, discouraging even the people, from doing social work. As a department, we recruit about 120 every year. That is a big number because Makerere University is one of the biggest, actually it's the biggest university in Uganda. Now, you get wondering if social workers are unemployed, if they're being discouraged, so what is going to happen of the social welfare system? Social work better traces service provisions in health, in education, in almost every sector. Transport, in many cases, in social workers to do to make sure that these services actually are well delivered. But we have a situation where they are not employed. I cannot just overemphasize the negative bit of unemployment, poverty, deprivation, suicide, substance abuse, criminality. I wouldn't want really to go much into that because that's why I'm now going to go into social entrepreneurship, because I believe we have to emphasize approaches that actually provide hope, that provide solutions to existing problems. Now, as I've already mentioned, we recruit quite many, and we get the very best students coming from A-level. We train them based on what we call the generalist practice approach, which I have seen here, by the way. When I went to the School of Social Work, I realized that students are doing PhD. They're doing PhD in social work, along with psychology, sociology, economics, political science. They have such a broad knowledge base, knowledge and skill base. Our emphasis has always been, when you train a social worker, you must try to teach as much as possible because you are trying to take care of a human being, a whole person. You're not going to tell human beings that please leave your economic bit of it or leave your psychology bit of it. You want to have a much, much more broad knowledge base and skill base to be able to be effective. Now, unemployment among the youth generally is so high in Uganda and generally in Africa. They're saying in Uganda, 83% of the youth are unemployed. The number for social workers is not so clear, but I would say about 7 out of 10 social workers are unemployed from my preliminary study findings. Now, as I said, I don't want to go into documenting their lived experiences, the agony they are going through. I'm interested in finding solutions to overcoming this rampant problem. Social entrepreneurship is one of those approaches which promise give hope in addressing this kind of problem. So I'm interested in finding a few of those social workers who have taken up this kind of enterprise or approach to work. How are they finding it? How are they doing it? What are the opportunities that they have found? How did they actually discover those opportunities? And what are the challenges that they're experiencing? So that's what I'm trying to do. Now, this again kind of speaks to what we call thinking out of the box. Assuming that those who are looking for jobs in the conventional social work are those in the two in the box, the entrepreneurs may be depicted by the one who's just on the top trying to see the world from a different perspective. And this is influenced by what we call now the developmental social work approach or paradigm, which emphasizes tackling the problems from the root causes rather than actually treating the symptoms. We could just do what we call social casework or remedial social work, where social workers normally treat clients who are presenting with problems, but that's not sustainable. So the point would be to go upstream to prevent people from actually dropping into the stream, and then we fix it from there. So entrepreneurship basically means to undertake something that is challenging. But then I'm interested in this form of entrepreneurship, which is social entrepreneurship. The aspects which define social entrepreneurship definitely speak to an entity that aims at creating what we call social value. The mission of a social entrepreneur is to make sure that there is social value creation, but again, taking some elements of an economic entrepreneurship. So you are talking of, for example, running a continuous activity that is producing goods and services. You are talking about high degree of autonomy. You are talking about a significant level of economic risk, which is always involved, and of course, a minimum level of paid workers. Now, when you look at social entrepreneurship, the scope again is very broad. It's difficult actually to define this concept because it may fall within what you would call the sector which is for profit, as long as it has an explicit statement that is actually creating social value. But also it may fall squarely into what you would call the not-for-profit sector. And then the emphasis, as I said here, is social mission or social value creation as opposed to wealth creation. If we define wealth creation in economic terms, maybe you're looking at profits. Social value, different. So these ones already kind of mentioned. Now, my study, this is done in Kampala, which is the capital city of Uganda. Firminus has done me an advantage by showing you where Uganda is found in Africa. I've done a case study involving so far 6 social entrepreneurs, mainly in the social services sector, done per passive sampling. This is a qualitative study so far. In-depth interviews, and I'm doing some review of second documents. So my preliminary findings, now, what are these people seeing? And normally this is a challenge because some people don't actually see the opportunities where the opportunities seem to happen. Now, if you come to Kampala, you would see so much of what you would call so much unmet needs. According to the social entrepreneurs, the other people may not see it. They will see chaos. They will see a lot of children on the streets. They will see the roads, borders everywhere. But the social entrepreneurs see a lot of opportunity for them. Now, one person who's running, for example, a shuttle services recognizes that the transport system is so disorganized. The parents are not able to go to work and attend to their children. The transport, if the children go by public means, probably they're likely to be not dropped at the school. They will arrive late. So somebody runs a shuttle, a pick and drop. So goes to parents' home, picks a child or children, like 5 of them, drops them to school on favorable terms, and the parents can concentrate on work. So they see that there is something for them they can take advantage of, and that's kind of an innovation. Now, in health care settings, the nurses are normally very few. They cannot take care of all the patients. They are underpaid. They are not motivated. Now, a social entrepreneur realizes by doing caretaking, where they just go and contract with the families to be able to do bedside nursing for the patient, for the family. The patient will just concentrate, the parents, the families will concentrate on raising money to pay the bills, but they're not in the hospital, and the nurses are not actually available to take care of the patients. So that becomes a huge opportunity, and they say there is so much need here. You can do it in almost every hospital and get some bit of money, but the most important thing is you are making sure that you do something which would dehumanize the human beings in such hospitals. So those are some of the opportunities I think there, and you can find them everywhere in education, in transport, in labor, generally the entire social services sector. Now, the other point which they see as a huge opportunity is again related with the first one, is distortions and extortions among entrepreneurs, mainly those who are doing the mainstream businesses in credit and learning facilities. People are taking care of, they are taking people's, properties. You come and get credit from the bank, and you can't pay because the interest is so high. Then you take a child to school, you pay school fees, and you don't pay all of it, and your child is withheld in school. Or you take a patient to the hospital, you pay some bit of money, you are not able to cover all the bills, and then the patient is withheld, is imprisoned even after recovery, to the extent that even bodies of patients have died are not released. So somebody who is now a social entrepreneur realizes they can stand in this and do some bit of innovations to be kind of moderating the interaction between the patients with their families. They can negotiate terms of payment. They can even negotiate the amount of money to be paid. They can solicit for care which they believe is more affordable. They can advise the families on where they should take the patient and where they should not take the patients. I think the available social networks and social capital, this is the biggest opportunity people have mentioned, which first of all leads to the emergence of social entrepreneurships, but also sustainability of those entrepreneurships. Somebody who is in a labor company, labor training and recruitment and expert company, tells me that actually do not even initially think about it, but a friend tells him, here is an opportunity, you can help me do it. You have some bit of information, you have some time. The person just speaks interest because he was already dealing with issues of unemployment in his own family. He had worked with a number of people who were unemployed. And he said, but I can train these people, I can educate them, I can mobilize them better just because of the available network, the available information. Now, another person who is in a private consulting firm realizes that for him to be able to have so many patients coming to him, he has a network of many doctors who have had so many of the patients struggling with psychosocial issues, and they can make so many referrals and even gets overwhelmed. But also realizes is linked with a newspaper, a daily newspaper that has a section that actually advises readers to seek psychosocial services, and they put his telephone number to say, if you need this kind of help, please call this person. And he ends up getting very many people. In fact, I was surprised that somebody who just started with only 2,000 as consultation fees. Currently is charging 100,000 and still has so many patients. That's about $30 per person. So the network's extremely very important in terms of initiating these kinds of enterprises and also sustaining them. Then few champions, a number of people have now done it for some bit of time, and they seem to be succeeding. They're available and ready to give information support and any other guidance that the emerging entrepreneurs may consult. Of course, they're not so much well documented, but they are there, very few of them. Now, supportive legal and policy frameworks. This kind of, that opportunity was mentioned mainly by policy and civil servants and top officers. They believe the government has created an enabling environment for anybody to do a business. In fact, one of the enterprises said, for me, I'm doing this business, but they don't even know I'm here. It's not so formally recognized, but nobody is coming here to say, please stop working. Nobody is just overseeing me and saying, no, you must get out of this. So it's like you can do anything. As long as it's well intended and you're not a bad person and you're providing a service that is appreciated by the community members, then you have that one. So what are the challenges that the people are seeing? One of them is stigma. The entrepreneurs are saying that generally social workers trained to work in white-collar jobs. So finding themselves doing jobs that are not high-end, not in mainstream government, looks so traumatizing and discouraging. Some of the people that I've tried to employ say, no, but for me, I started to be in a big office, 5 levels, like the way we are here, 10th floor. So they don't want to get their hands dirty. But also, there is a feeling that the jobs in Uganda, in business generally, is for those people who are not formally educated, which is very strange. So if you get formally educated, you must go in a formal job. There are moral dilemmas. Working with people who are social clients, normally poor, children, women, charging them to pay some bit of money, even if they can afford, it creates a lot of tension. Somebody can pay you some money, but you know this person has a mental problem. He's come for counseling or has HIV. Poor attitudes among the social workers, especially those who they're trying to employ. They realize people cannot just work without being supervised. They need your presence, physical presence. The moment you move, they leave. And then they're creating problems. Then mistrust, you give them money to go and pay something, just basic things. Then they sometimes don't pay and create problems. The other point of poor sector regulation, you know, there is so much red tape. The organizations are structured in a way that each organization works independent of the other. And that creates a lot of problem. You want to get a clearance from a sister organization. From here to the next, you find the organizations are not linked together. You have to get clearance from a topmost person in the organization to create so much delay. Of course, obtaining capital is very expensive. The banks are they charge so high. So what are the implications for these findings? I realized that there should be unique standards developed for, particularly for social entrepreneurship, because if we look at businesses, the way we know businesses, the profits is what determines whether somebody is succeeding or not. This may not be the case with social entrepreneurship because performance is evaluated differently, but those standards are not yet there. We may need to strengthen policy and legislative implementation to make sure that we deal with issues of red tape, corruption, favoritism. Then we should also provide opportunity for continuous education and professional development. Social workers naturally study some bit of economics, but they don't really take it far. So they may need refresher courses, they may need to have hybrid courses at higher levels like a master's PhD so that they can have actually better knowledge of running these skills, enterprises. Then we should conduct more research. And I think so far this is one of the very first, research projects I've seen in our country, focusing on social work and entrepreneurship, so that we can see, for example, I thought I would characterize the various social enterprises that are operating. I should be able to even have a clear picture of the unemployment situation in Uganda. All these are possible areas to just be studied. Then we should also have conferences, workshops such as this so that we can share this knowledge which is emerging, critique it, discuss it, refine it. That's how we get a better picture. For now, I would like to say thank you so much to the African Studies Center for inviting me and hosting me here, giving me the opportunity to present my findings. Thank you to Makerere University for giving me 2 months of being away and taking up all my teaching duties, which is really always heavy. To my hosts in the School of Social Work, and to my fellow researchers for the warmth and the confidence of just knowing that we can do it together when we are here. And to everybody, I want to say thank you so much, and this is what I have so far.
Thank you very much. So the first presentation, my colleague Henrike Florisbos was running the question period. She's an anthropologist. I'm a linguist, and now you will see how linguists and anthropologists do it differently. Anthropologists take 5 questions and then give the person an opportunity to answer. Linguists get question, answer, question, answer. So questions for Justus. Yes, Pierre.
Thanks, Justus, for the nice presentation. You kind of gave us many things about entrepreneurship from a social worker perspective, which is a good thing. It's great to see that you people can generate money from ordinary people or ordinary citizens. So what I wanted to find out more from that is the same way you say that you can knock at everyone to say, no, we can help you, you must pay $35, which might not even be fund from your customer. Do you have options to seek the same, to approach the government with the same idea? so as at least you can knock to the government every time so that they know that somewhere, somehow, they have to fulfill some obligation toward the citizens. For example, giving service for like health service, which supposed to be one of the basic services. So if one cannot afford the health services, at least the government should come even halfway, instead of the social worker going to the person and say, no, we'll offer you this, we'll offer you this. Why not knocking at the government, first of all? That is almost like a bridge between the citizens and the country itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Definitely, by going developmental social work, we are going away from what we would call remedial social work, where we expect the government to give us money to give those who are disadvantaged. We have realized over the year that government is actually, even if you frog it so many times, even if you shout, there is not so much capacity to meet the needs of so many people who are struggling. Our country is now having about 42 million people. Saviors will help me with GDPs. Our GDP is very small, probably smaller than the one of Michigan or one of the states around here. But certainly when you are going developmental social work, and something like what I'm promoting here, it is to make sure that we don't only target the clients to pay for the services. We also have to have an advocacy and activist kind of tone to our work, so that those who can afford, then they may seek a private service, and those, and even the majority who may not have the capacity, then they may still get some bit of money or services from government. So it's in a way trying to create more options so that different people at different economic capacities can be supported.
Gifty.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I want to know whether the current social entrepreneurs have any link with your department, and whether they have the opportunity to talk to the students that you are working with, because you mentioned that you think 7 out of 10 social workers are unemployed. Probably it would be because there isn't emphasis on social entrepreneurship in the schools. So I want to know what's the relationship between that.
Thank you so much. I think for a long time, we did not actually know that we could do things differently. We continued to train social worker year in, year out, and many of them ended up not really getting very good, placements. We did not even try to imagine there was a field called social entrepreneurship until very late. I think I started engaging with this concept about 2-3 years ago when I was in Europe in a different, kind of academic forum. We have placements, but normally students tend to go to organizations that deliver relief. So we have not been having so much of the contacts with a few of the people who have actually tried to create meaningful jobs for themselves. So this is something we are now going to begin to do based on my research findings and the contacts that I'm building up.
Yeah, that sounds kind of nicely in agreement with your statement that networks are important, right? So it builds on that. Sevias, sorry, I couldn't see you.
Thanks, Justus, for the nice presentation. I am trying to look at the two figures that you gave us. You gave us the figure for the national unemployment rate, which is like 83%. That's like 8 in every 10. And then you went on to say, in terms of social workers, it's about 7 in every 10. So, well, social workers are actually graduates, I would want to say, but the 83% includes everybody. And then you proceeded to talk about the social entrepreneurship, but you are not putting the aspect of profit in there because of it being social and therefore welfare and assisting. How much do you think people can be driven to do some work just for the sake of assisting the community or the society when they are actually also not able financially in their own way or in their own capacity. Do you think there is that drive for that social entrepreneurship, which is not profit-driven, in a society that is that difficult for almost everybody? Thank you.
Thank you so much. As Firminus alluded to in his presentation, that some of the people who are actually rich in his community have not gone higher in formal education. This is actually generally interesting. In Uganda, it is happening that many people out there who dropped out of school in primary 7, in senior, early secondary schools, have acquired capacities to make much money, but in a fraudulent way. I don't know whether that fraudulent is the right correct, but in a very bad way. Somebody may lend you money, the following morning comes with court brokers and they take your building. Or somebody will just run taxis, but in a very haphazard way. They are very disorganized. Borders knocking people, but they don't have the human face to these businesses. So there is a possibility, and I've already mentioned this, that actually you may have to do social entrepreneurship that even generates much money, as long as it is proud back in your enterprise to create much more social wealth, okay? So the mission for social entrepreneurs is mainly to have, like, to create a social capital, to create social value, to make sure that societies live humanely, okay? But you make money, definitely. You may have to make money. You don't make money in the way somebody who's doing hard-nosed business does it, okay? Now, you realize when you characterize the social entrepreneurship, they move from those which are in the non-profit-making kind of sectors to those which are actually in business that make profit, but they still plow much of the profits into the entrepreneurship. So there is no problem having, for example, a big building like this. If I can have so many students who can occupy it, and they pay good monies, and I use much of that money, for example, to sponsor the children who are on the streets, okay? And also pay workers very good monies to make sure that my business is sustainable. The underlying philosophy here is the social mission. Are you really working so hard to make sure that you are not just looking at your profits, you are working for the social as opposed to the individual? Thank you.
So I think we have time for one question. Please. You get the last question.
Yeah, thank you. So your last bullet item on your challenges slide was, I think, very, very relevant in the sense that investment capital, or the lack of investment capital, and the cost of getting that can often, inhibit entrepreneurial activity. However, the amount, that last item on that slide to me is very, very relevant. And what's interesting is the amount of money that's required to start up an entrepreneur. There are plenty of entrepreneurial people in Uganda. So the middle poor attitudes among the youth toward work is a little bit misleading. But, so the amount of money you need to set someone up in an entrepreneurial, successful entrepreneurial activity is relatively small. But it's the difficulty in getting access to that is very difficult and very expensive in terms of high interest rates. I'll give you an example. So I recently got involved with actually a graduate from Chambogo University, since you had that on one of your slides, which is a tragic case. He when he came out of, he graduated from Chumboga, he wanted to set up a business. And he came up with the idea of an ice cream business, which would operate in schools, which was helping students to stay in school because they were able to, have access to a kind of social activity, which is taking selfies and eating ice cream in school in the breaks. So the cost of doing that was relatively little. And what he told me was that in 1 month, that machine paid for itself. And he's now buying additional machines with the money that he made. The investment was something like $1,000, which is impossible to get, except somebody provided that capital. So the question is, why is that not kind of part of the system? That provision of relatively small amounts of capital. So that's my question for you.
Thank you so much. I love the question. And definitely for many entrepreneurs, whether they are mainstream business enterprises, the way we know them, entrepreneurs, the way we know them, or even social entrepreneurship, they have what you call the blue ocean mentality. They feel like they can do it anyway without even the biggest amounts of money. One of the entrepreneurs told me he started with only 2,000 from each client, and for the first 2 months got about 4 clients. For many of us would have given up. You feel like it's not going to work. But also, what we need to know that what is capital? Capital beyond the money also goes to human capital. There are those who don't have the human capital. They may have education, have a degree, but they really cannot be creative. They are not so productive with their ideas. They cannot create networks, which are extremely essential for them to make this. But when it comes to financial capital, we don't have so much money available from government structures. Those which they claim to be available at the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development tells me, because they have programs like youth development, livelihood program, they have women entrepreneurship program. To access those monies is so difficult. Actually, much of it is lost in the process because of corruption. Okay. But also the other time I was working with Firminus here, we realized my bank, where my salary comes from, where it is paid to in Makerere University, DFC is done here. I saw DFCU. When I was in South Africa doing my studies, I saw Stanbic, Standard Chartered Bank. Those are the banks which we have in our country. We don't have local banks. So the banks which we have from all these other countries that actually making money than business. We operate the telephone line, which is in South Africa. DSTV is also controlled in South Africa. So all these big enterprises, they're actually siphoning the monies from us. So the government doesn't have so much money that is available. The institutions which are commercial charge very high interest rates that are very prohibitive. When you talk of 1,000, for example, dollars, I'm not sure if my salary is up to that much. And I'm a senior lecturer in the department, the PhD. So for a person who has sponsored himself, who is maybe a peasant, as Firminus mentioned, that 1,000, $10 is enough to have a child in school for the whole term. You realize then you cannot think of a huge enterprise that can create much social capital or social value that you would really want to have if you're ambitious. So it requires a lot of patience to be able to build this up for a very long time. If you are not that person who is resilient and patient, you just drop out. Thank you.
Thank you, Justus. Thank you. So, thank you for our 2 colleagues who were the first members of this cohort to do their presentations. And as you know, unfortunately, they can only stay with us for 2 months. They're not quite leaving yet, but soon. So we are not quite saying goodbye, but because this is the last time that we're all together, We will do the thing that we do at the end of Umaps. And the rest of the Umaps scholars, you should all close your eyes, because you shouldn't really know what's coming for you at the end. But, you know, we're glad you're here to celebrate with our two colleagues here. So thank you so much for spending time with us. And please, when you go back home, say thank you to Makerere University, because, as you've mentioned, they released you from teaching for these 2 months. It means your colleagues had to work harder. And we get the benefit of that, because you become a member of our community while you are here. So please go back and tell them thank you from us, that they made it possible for us to benefit from your presence here. So what we would like to do, and Chris, I see you're here, so please also come up. So we always mark people's participation in Umaps by giving to each of our people at the end of their time at Umaps a plaque to, you know, acknowledge that you completed the Umaps program. And from my colleague, whom you've all learned to know, Chris Peak, a certificate for the academic writing workshop. And this is also a photo opportunity, so one at a time. Firminus, first for you. On the stage so that we can all understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations. And from Chris.
Great, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And then the same for our friend Justus. You didn't expect this. It is like politicians, you know, you stand here for a moment. It's also a little bit, you know, not quite honest, because I know a certificate saying you've completed the writing seminar when in fact you haven't. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming and spending time with us. This next week is going to be better weather, so please spend some time outside. Yes? When is the next what? Oh, the next check-in session. Well, not today, because we're having this today, so 2 weeks from today. Or if you feel we need to talk next week, then we do it next week. But I think officially our next Umaps check-in is in 2 weeks from today. Okay.